Hello and welcome to everyone that's joining us online. I want to introduce my colleague, Jenny Knott, who is one of our silver and jewellery specialists at Dawson's. And my name's Nicky Houston, and I'm head of the silver jewellery and watch department. We have a sale this week on Thursday, which has got over 300 lots of silver jewellery and watches. And Jenny and I just wanted to share with you some of our favourite things that are included in the sale. The catalogue is online for you to have a look at, and any queries, Jenny and I are busy with condition reports at the moment with our colleague Susan upstairs, and we'll just run through some of our favourite lots. So Jenny, come on, tell me about this.
Well, it's always fun, isn't it, picking out the things that we really love from the sale and having a chance to talk about them. So we picked this for various reasons, I think, didn't we?
Yes.
First of all, it's early. It's 1741. So I just love the fact that that has been alive for generation after generation and surviving in better condition than we sometimes feel.
Yes, that's
we're
true.
much younger. And the two things I thought would be particularly fun or interesting to say about that is it's a bowl and cover. And we have got fantastic hallmarking laws in this country. That keeps the buyer safe and sound when they're buying things because they are legal requirements. There is a hallmarking act. And what you must have with your hallmarking is when pieces of there are separate pieces to anything. So even a handle separating itself from the body of a teapot or a coffee pot, they need individual marks. You cannot just assume that because the base of this is marked that the cover will just go with it. So that I love because both are marked. We know they've been together. We know they've been together for their whole life.
Same date letter,
Same date,
maker.
exactly.
Yeah.
And it's really important, but it's your guarantee. I mean, it's wonderful to think that way back in the mid 18th century, we were still guaranteeing that things should be as stated,
Genuine.
And obviously the sterling silver mark, which guarantees you that your silver will be a 92.5% silver content. And then the other thing I liked about this is that it's flat chased, and flat chasing was very typical of that period, but it's not commonly found. So when we talk about chasing generally, it's a sort of embossing, it's pushing out the design from behind out. So it's worked from behind to show a design on the front face. But flat chasing gives you a similar look, and you say similar because actually it's achieved with a blunt instrument from the front of the piece, so not from behind. So it would be chiseled, slightly chiseled. That sounds like a fairly rough term, but it was a very skilled thing to do, to chase the design. So you've got the same effect as embossing. You've got relief, but it was done from the top rather than underneath. And I always love on these old things that everything was done by hand. That was genuinely crafted in a workshop.
And these are rare things.
Oh my goodness, yes.
Very rare, because if you think about the population, there was a very, very few people that could afford silver. Because the population was a lot smaller, and there was a very, very small aristocracy that could afford these pieces of such quality. And also fashions have changed over the years, and some of these have been damaged and they've been altered, so to speak. And we had one last year which had handles, and there was some suggestion that the handles had been added later. Now, if they had have been added later, we wouldn't have been able to sell it legally without the handles being hallmarked separately. And the antique plate committee still meets in London. I think it's 3 times a year, and they discuss pieces of silver that may have been altered. And luckily for us, they agreed that it was in its original state, and we were able to sell it. But they still check catalogues right the way through the land and check fairs in order to make sure that the pieces that are on sale are actually legally able to be sold. And we've had recently a few pieces that have come in for valuation that have actually been forgeries of their time, although a long time ago, but still you can't sell them.
No, it's really, it's interesting to talk about the Antique Plate Committee and vetting, because again, these are guarantees for buyers. And the Goldsmiths Hall run a wonderful course called Fakes and Forgeries, which Nicky and I have both been on, and it highlights some of the things that may have been altered and adapted. So actually, it's an interesting point you raise, because for example, you could have a Georgian tablespoon, and the Victorians could bury it, which literally means bury decoration, fruits and flowers, not under the earth, could bury it. That is allowed because you've changed the decoration. But if, for example, you took that spoon and you changed you say it had split at the side and you changed its function to be a scoop of some sort.
We had some spoons that had been changed into 3-pronged forks recently that came in for valuation. 3-pronged forks, obviously, are rarer than the spoons, highly desirable, and yet these had obviously been changed.
And so change of use is not allowed. That's an out-and-out forgery. But we see relatively often mugs and tankards that clearly are used specifically, but would have greater use as a jug.
Yes.
And they will let into the rim of the tankard a spout.
Yes.
Now, that is illegal, as you well know, to put a spout in unless you have the spout separately hallmarked. So you might see, for example, a George II tankard where the spout has been let in, but it has a modern hallmark.
Yes.
That is allowed. So it's quite complicated, isn't it?
Yeah.
But
this
is good fun, and all here for the protection of buyers, which is good to know if you're considering bidding.
Yeah, and also part of the history of the pieces. So this is lot 287 in the sale. Please do go and have a look at the Porringer. So now we're going to go to lot 256. Now, Jenny and I both love true antique pieces of jewellery, and this is most beautiful enamel cross set with diamonds. Jenny, tell us a bit more about it.
Well, I'm just going to slightly correct you, which I always hesitate to do. No, it's lot 56.
Oh, 56.
Not 256, in case anybody's sort of heading towards the online catalogue.
Yeah.
I agree with absolutely everything else you've said. It's beautiful, isn't it? As you say, we love antique pieces. This is set with rose diamonds, and rose diamonds have a really different, subtle look. They were cut really to be seen by not in artificial light. So they would have been seen in candlelight, and they have a wonderfully subtle look to them. Somebody's going to correct me, but I think that there are 24 facets, triangular facets on a rose diamond. I await the deluge of people telling me I'm wrong about that. But they're cut at angles such that the light just bounces off in a subtle way.
So I am trying to just move it backwards and forwards. So
and the other things that we were going to talk about, or what of interest particularly with this cross is, so the enameling is what we call guilloche enamel. It's a French term, so if you see it written, it looks as if it's guilloche enamel, but the L's are silent in the French translation. So guilloche enamel, and it looks as if the enamel is patterned, but actually the enamel is a translucent enamel that's built up over a machine turned ground, but it gives wonderful depth when you look into the enamel. And I know that you and I both love that cobalt blue colour. It's really stunning. It's really stunning.
But also look at the back, the quality of the workmanship on the back of this piece is just lovely.
And we would always say, when you look at a piece of jewellery or a piece of silver, in fact, anything, I'm sure our furniture experts would say the same about furniture. If people have taken the same amount of trouble to make the back look wonderful as they have done to the front, you're looking at something that's really high quality.
Yeah.
If actually all it is about the bit that you're seeing at the front, which we also see a fair bit, and you've got a roughly made rudimentary back to it, it just doesn't shout quality in the way that something like this does. And the final thing I wanted to really say about that is it has a serpent motif, and the serpent motif in the 19th century became incredibly popular because Prince Albert, well, first of all, he introduced really the idea of an engagement ring, and he gave Princess Victoria, Queen Victoria,
Yep.
a ring which was a coiled serpent, and it's to represent eternal love. So that piece has a coiled serpent around it representing eternal love, and it's a very sought after, much used motif in Victorian jewellery, and rather a nice one because it speaks of love, and we all like things that speak of love, don't we?
Absolutely, absolutely. So shall we go on to, I'll get the lot number right. This is lot 1 in the sale. And again, we've got a lovely brooch of really, really good quality. Unfortunately, it has got a little bit of damage to it, but this is a micro mosaic brooch brought back from the Grand Tour in Italy, and you've got a scene of the Colosseum there.
Well, again, I love the fact that this brings together a beautiful piece of jewellery, but with part of the social history of the time. So when wealthy people, it was majority of wealthy people, took the Grand Tour of Europe, educating young ladies and young gentlemen, they would buy souvenirs from wherever they went. And what's changed? You know, we go on holiday today and we want to come back with something to remind us of our holiday. And often people came back with micro mosaics from Italy of variable quality. So there are an enormous number that are fairly rudimentary and in gilt metal, but the joy of this is it's beautifully made. So the micro mosaic is literally that, micro pieces of hard stone, different agates, lapis lazuli, formed in such a way as to give you a 3D image, usually, although not always, of somewhere like the Colosseum or somewhere of historical importance, although you and I both know that there were, they also did subjects like dogs, gardens, flowers, cornucopia, but that one is typical being of the Colosseum. But what I think is you can tell is when you push your finger over the top of that, it'll be absolutely smooth. And that is because the micro mosaics have been set so expertly with such finesse that you can't even feel the way that they have been set into the piece.
But also the other thing is to wear something like this would be to say, I am educated, I have been on the Grand Tour. So again, it's a social status piece as well.
Well, I think I'm going to be wearing that till the sale then.
So that is lot 1, and now we're going to jump on to another lot of jewellery, which is lot 99 in the sale, another Victorian piece. Now, Jenny, you know a bit more about this than I do.
Well, this really beautiful pendant and collar was brought into the Hampstead office. I love the quality of it. I will be honest, and I think that it's quite possibly a marriage. So I think the pendant probably didn't start life on the collar, but they're both about 1880 in date. That wonderful depth of colour in the gold is because the gold it's unhallmarked, as it often was at the time, but it's going to be at least 15 carat, but we believe it's 18 carat gold, and it's got that real depth. That people use words like buttery gold, but it just
is buttery.
It's a sort of soft buttery colour, and wonderful attention to detail again, which you'll see is a point I bang on about. But the rows and rows of beading on that collar, and then the pendant, that's an enamel dome with a star motif. We see that all the time in Victorian jewellery, pendants, rings. It's a very popular motif. Very often you'll have a domed pendant like that, and you'll turn it over, and on the reverse there'll be a glazed panel, and that will have some hair in it, and that would have been used as a mourning piece, or not necessarily black enamel.
Yeah.
When you think about it, I mean, life expectancy was not as it now is, clearly. And we didn't have cameras and photographs. So the way that people felt close to the departed was to have some part of them near their heart. So you would take the deceased, you'd do plait the deceased's hair. It sounds a
Yes.
bit morbid, but actually it was probably a very comforting thing
No,
to do.
it is.
And you'd put it in that glazed panel, so you would keep a memento of your dearly loved relative or whoever it was close to your heart.
It's actually, funnily enough, that's relevant today with making jewellery from pet hair or
Absolutely.
a horse's tail or mane if they're lost, that you'll have a bracelet made or a locket made. So it is actually as relevant today as it was then.
And it's rather lovely, and I'm sure it did give comfort. And we love that because the quality. Sometimes you see the bosses in turquoise. That one's enamel, and also pale pink coral. So we're very used to seeing a sort of rich, reddy orange coral, but there's a little pale pink coral, and then usually a rose diamond in the centre. Often, because they're slightly proud, they can often sustain damage. But that one is in really, really super quality.
I also actually think that this is actually quite a modern design.
I felt that you were going to say contemporary. It actually really is, isn't it?
Yeah.
And that oversized jump ring is very current motif, isn't it?
Yeah, absolutely, absolutely. So you can have, as with all these things, you get revivals all the time, and that is the history of jewellery, furniture, whichever discipline we're in. And this is actually really quite contemporary for the fashions now. We've had white gold and platinum for a very, very long time, but we are seeing a resurgence in people wanting to wear yellow gold.
Absolutely. And particularly now in watches, rose gold is absolutely zeitgeist. So we tended to, 10 or 15 years ago, you'd think of rose gold as very quintessentially late Victorian, early Edwardian, if you think about the rose gold watch chains. But Rolex rose gold watches now are the ones to have, aren't they?
Absolutely. So let's go to lot 192, which now this is a particular favourite, and it's on the header of the catalogue, and it's an interesting piece for me particularly, because I actually did the insurance valuation for this and some other pieces in the sale over 15 years ago. So it's come back into my life. And this is a Swiss gold box with enamel.
I was going to say, once you'd seen that, you wouldn't have forgotten it when it went across your threshold again, would you? I mean, look at the quality of the enamelling on the cover, and it's just exquisite. Enamel is very, very hard, but it is also brittle. So it is. If you lose a chip of enamel, it can literally ping. And actually, I remember in my early days working at the first auction house I worked for, we had enamel boxes under heavy duty lights, which we had then. And we probably all got one of those stories, heard a ping and literally the enamel had gone. But it is a very hard substance. However, we do think that the side panels, which you can probably see there, in fact, this is a good example. When I talked about guilloche enamelling, that is the engine turned or the machine turned design underneath over which the translucent enamel is built. But in this case, obviously, there's been damage to one or more panels, and the way that they have dealt with that is to actually remove the enamel. Well, in our opinion, they've removed the enamel panels, which actually gives you a cleaner finish than having damaged enamels. And enamel is notoriously difficult to repair, particularly to match it to the rest of it.
It requires heat for a start, and it is essentially powdered glass. So it is very, very difficult to repair, especially invisibly repair. I think there's possibly been a little bit of repair to the top corner, but I mean, this is something that is commensurate with age and use.
Yes, I mean, and these things were made to be beautiful, but they were also made to be used. People did use them, and they carried them quite often. It's staggering that things remain in the good condition they do.
And this is 18 karat gold, isn't it?
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah, it will
Yeah.
definitely be 18
Yeah.
karat.
And
It's just very, do you know, it's exquisite, isn't it, Nicky? It's just
but this was even the highest quality of its time.
Absolutely.
And that's one of the important things, is that really good quality pieces will always stand out.
Yeah.
And this would have been an incredibly expensive piece.
Oh gosh, very
at its time.
expensive. It would have been sort of wildly expensive at its time. And then we're lucky that there were sort of patrons of the arts who had that sort of money at their disposal to commission pieces like that or to buy them. I mean, we are phenomenally lucky that month in, month out, we get to see interesting, unexpected pieces that walk over our threshold, that we can have these kind of conversations about things that are genuinely a privilege and a pleasure to see and to catalogue.
Absolutely, absolutely. Well, thank you very much, Jenny, for joining me today. You can always visit Jenny in our Hampstead office on Fridays by appointment, and she's more than happy to have a look at any silver or jewellery or watches that you are considering selling. And equally, you can always ring up to make an appointment with me in Maidenhead. Thank you very much for listening, and we hope to see you again soon.